Hey everyone, welcome back for another video. Today I'm going to be sharing some recipes that you can make using canned pumpkin. I did a video about apples earlier in the season, so I figured I should probably do a pumpkin video. Let's go ahead and get started. First up, I have this pumpkin chili, and I know you're probably thinking, what? Pumpkin chili? But just trust me, it's delicious. I'm going to go ahead and start with my seasoning. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of cayenne, and a half teaspoon of salt and a half teaspoon of pepper. I'm going to give that a mix in this little bowl, and we're just going to set that aside for right now. Into my pot, I'm adding 1 pound of 85/15 ground turkey, and I'm also going to add in half of an onion in here. Next, I'm adding in half of a chopped green onion and half of a chopped red bell pepper, along with half of the seasoning we made. You're going to reserve the other half for later on in the recipe. Just give that a good stir and let that cook through. Once my ground turkey is cooked through, I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. I'm just going to let this cook for about 2 minutes, let that smell really get going throughout your house, and then you're going to add in a half cup of chicken broth. Next, I'm going to add in 15 ounces of pure pumpkin, make sure it's pure pumpkin, and then 1 can of diced tomatoes with green chilies. You can also use Rotel, but the off-brand works just fine. 1 can of mixed chili beans. Do not drain the beans or the tomatoes. Now I'm adding in 1 teaspoon of tomato paste and the rest of the seasoning that we made earlier. After you mix that really well, this is kind of where you can begin to customize your chili, so you can taste it, and if you want it to be a little bit more pumpkin-y, then you can add in 1 teaspoon of pumpkin spice, and if you want it to be less pumpkin-y, then skip this step. If you prefer a sweet chili, then this step is for you. I'm adding in 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. I definitely prefer a sweet chili, but if you do not, again, you can skip this step. Now I'm just going to add the lid and let these flavors develop for about 15 to 20 minutes. This is what your chili will look like. If you stop here, I'm actually going to show you how to have this chili 2 different ways. This is without the cream cheese, just a little bit of shredded cheese on the top. It's delicious this way. But if you prefer your chili to be a little creamier, you can add in 4 ounces of cream cheese. Just let that melt down. I put the cream cheese in and I let this go for about 20 minutes just to make sure it melts all the way through, and then I give it a good stir to make sure it's combined well. Where me and my husband are from, there's actually a pumpkin festival where they serve all things pumpkin, and my dad used to get pumpkin chili all the time, but let me tell you, this recipe is a million times better than what they ever had. I just served this with a little sour cream and shredded cheese on top, and it's delicious. Next up, one of my favorite fall recipes is pumpkin French toast sticks. So in this little bowl, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. I'm going to mix this up and just set this aside. This is going to be our coating. Next, in a separate bowl, I'm going to make our egg mixture. I'm adding in 2 eggs, 1/3 cup of milk, or you can use half and half, either one is fine, 1/4 cup of pure pumpkin, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. I'm just gonna go ahead and mix that really well. I do want to mention I am halving this recipe for me and my husband today. Personally, I like using brioche bread with this specific recipe, and for this one we are doing sticks. You could obviously just do regular French toast, but I love to do the sticks. So I'm going to take my bread and just cut those into 1-inch wide pieces. And since I'm cutting this recipe in half, I'm only going to need 5 pieces of bread. Now to get started, I'm going to just dip these into my egg mixture. Make sure I cover them on all the sides. Then I'm just going to transfer them over to my greased griddle. You do not have to use a griddle, but it's easiest for me. I just used a little bit of butter on there so they don't stick to the surface. I just cook these for a few minutes on each side. I like to get them a little bit crispy, that way they don't end up soggy, and then once they're crispy, then I take them off. Once they come off the griddle, they are going into the sugar and cinnamon mixture. Shake them around in there to give them a nice coating. You can serve these however you want to. I'm adding on some maple syrup over the top, and then we're just gonna add a little bit of whipped cream and pumpkin pie spice over the top, and they are ready to eat. This is actually my husband's plate. He loves whipped cream. I'm actually not a very big whipped cream fan, so I actually just dipped mine in a little cup of syrup on the side. Next up, we're doing this pumpkin cheesecake bread. I've made this a few times. This is my favorite way to do it. I am preheating my oven to 350. Into my bowl, I'm adding 1 egg, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, 1 cup of packed brown sugar, 1/3 cup of sour cream, a 1/2 tablespoon of cinnamon, and a 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. Now I'm just going to go ahead and get this whisked together. You want to make sure you break up your brown sugar so there are no clumps. Once your mixture is very smooth, go ahead and add in a 15-ounce can of pure pumpkin. Now that that's combined, we're going to go ahead and add in our flour. I'm adding 1 1/4 cup of flour, and then 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Go ahead and get that mixed together. It's going to get thicker, so you might want to get rid of the whisk, but you just want to make sure that that flour is mixed in well. As soon as it's combined, we're going to go ahead and put this into our pan. I'm going to spray down my loaf pan really well with nonstick spray, and then I'm going to put half of my batter into my pan. I'm just spreading this out as best as I can, and then we are going to quickly whip up our cheesecake that goes on top of that. So in my bowl here, I have 6 ounces of softened cream cheese. I'm going to add a half cup of sugar, 1 egg, and 3.5 tablespoons of flour into this bowl and get that mixed up really well. Moving on, now that that's mixed together, we're going to dump it on top of our pumpkin batter and spread that around as even as you possibly can. Now you're going to want to grab the rest of your pumpkin bread batter, and that's going on top of the cheesecake layer, and it's very important that you spread that around as even as possible. Try not to move around the cheesecake layer, but you definitely want to make sure it's covered. This is going in my oven for 55 minutes. If I were you, I would check it a little sooner than that just to make sure your oven's not too much different than mine. Here's what my bread looked like straight from the oven. I did let it completely cool right here, and then I moved it over to a serving tray. This is what it looks like when it's cut open. It's so delicious. I'm very happy with this recipe, this variation. After all the recipes I've tried, this one is great. Next up, I'm actually sharing another savory pumpkin dish. I know what you're thinking, pumpkin Alfredo, but guys, honestly, expand your palate and try things like this out. They might shock you. Into my skillet, I'm melting 2 tablespoons of butter with 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. I'm gonna let that garlic cook in this butter for just a minute, and then I'm going to add in 1 cup of pure pumpkin, next, add in 1.5 cups of half and half. This will take a minute to mix together. Just keep stirring. Eventually it'll get there. Now I'm adding in a half cup of grated Parmesan cheese. So you just want to make sure that when you mix this in that you break up all the clumps. Just give this a second to cook and let that cheese melt into your sauce. Now we're just going to add salt and pepper. I'm adding about a half teaspoon of salt and pepper, but don't be afraid to go ahead and taste this. You can add as much or as little salt and pepper as you like. Now I'm just going to add a dash of nutmeg. Be careful not to overdo it with the nutmeg. I'm going to give this a good stir and let this simmer on low on my stove for about 15 to 20 minutes. This is what my finished plate looked like. I just served this over a little bit of noodles. It's also good on butternut squash, and I added a little bit of Parmesan cheese and parsley over the top. I would say I'm a pretty adventurous eater. I wasn't sure if I would like this, but I was pleasantly surprised with this one. Now we're moving on to pumpkin pie cupcakes. I'm starting off by getting my cupcake pan ready, and I'm putting in these cupcake liners. You can find more festive cupcake liners at the store right now, but I was just using these basic ones. Getting started with my wet ingredients into my mixing bowl, I'm adding in 15 ounces of pure pumpkin, 3/4 cup of evaporated milk, 3/4 cup of sugar, 2 eggs, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I'm going to go ahead and give that a mix, and then we're going to move on to our dry ingredients. In a separate bowl, I'm adding in 2/3 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Once my dry ingredients were mixed together, I added those into my wet ingredients. I gave those another good mix. With this one, I definitely had to scrape the sides and the bottom of my mixing bowl, so make sure you check that way everything gets combined. Now we're going to start adding these into our cupcake liners. I would advise you to spray your liners with a little bit of nonstick spray because these do come out a little sticky. I'm adding in 1/4 cup of mix into each of the liners. These are going in the oven on 350 for about 20 minutes. Once they come out, you're going to leave them sit in the pan for another 30 minutes, and then you're going to transfer them over into the refrigerator to chill for about an hour. You will notice that these do sink in just a little bit, but that's perfectly fine. It just makes extra room for the whipped cream that's going on the top. I'm just going to add a little bit of this like icing over the top, and then sprinkle on a little bit of pumpkin pie spice over the top. When I made these were a huge hit. They were exactly like pumpkin pie, but in a much smaller portion, which is really great if you don't want to be eating an entire slice of pie. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you want to try any of these recipes, or if you do try any of these, let me know below. I'd love to know which ones you thought looked best. I'll see you guys back here on Sunday.